legacies of the many Mediterranean cultures. Think of Italy's wealth of marvels, the talent and skill of men and women who look to the future. Beauty connects people. Italy travels to Dubai. Expo 2020, the first universal exposition in the Arab world. To the east, and then an open, floating architecture, a statement of beauty and creativity. Imagine 3 towering naves, a new vision in which technology and nature, sustainability and a circular economy coexist. Welcoming and energizing place, a pulsating and generating hive of new discoveries and connections, an oasis where experience, memory and emotion play out, at the core of Expo 2020. Beauty connects people. This is the Italian Pavilion. Vision of a future that is already upon us. The journey begins with a vision seen from above and stretching into the distance. Come see the Belvedere and its display of beauty. A space given over to the most enchanting Italian landscapes with their infinite variety and appeal. Admire the beauty of quality craftsmanship. Many different stories of talent and creativity. Witness the determination of innovators, the beauty inherent in the desire of those who push the boundaries of infinite space and plumb the deepest waters. A meeting of technology and nature to protect the life to come. To where it all began, to memory, the mother of arts and science, a theatre of knowledge, a symphony of beauty and virtue, truth and fairness. Beauty connects people.
Good morning everybody. It's a very pleasure for me to be here today in Dubai, inside of the Italian Pavilion, and to start this event, strange event, and is related with climate and biodiversity. And since we are inside of the Climate and Biodiversity Week, and the next slide, please. And this event is related with this topic, scientifically really, the top 10 scientists in the world and over their unanswered question to promising young researchers. And the idea is that, you know, that every time we think that normal people must ask at the scientists, at the big people, please try to resolve our problem. So we decided to change this vision, and we decided that the top scientists ask to us the, what's happened? Okay, and I asked the top scientists in the world to ask us how it's possible to change what they have in mind and what the future generation can do for us, okay, or what they can do or what we can do for them, okay. So I asked 10 scientists in the world, please give us your question, and our young people will try to give an answer. And before to start with this event, I want to ask at Professor Gianluca Sarà from University of Palermo in Italy to have a speech about biodiversity and why is so important biodiversity also in this time after pandemic, after the problem that we had with the virus and with COVID. So please, Gianluca Sarà, if you can come here.
Okay, thank you, Paolo. Okay, thank you so much, Paolo. Professor Galli, thank you for inviting me here. It is really intriguing to talk about biodiversity in this place in Dubai, because, as we said before with our colleagues and friends, it really strange to see how the man is able to control the nature, but when the nature, when the control is not so enough, the nature immediately emerges. This is a really nice moment for me, because Paolo actually, and thank you, Paolo, left me free to talk about one topic. Just one diktat from Paolo: please talk in not more than 10 minutes, but you will use 13 minutes, I hope. And then my idea was just to show, just to reflect with you what is the concept for ecologists, what is the concept of ecosystem functioning, and then we start from the idea of ecosystem functions and why there is a mechanistic link between biodiversity and ecosystem functioning, and why this relationship, the so-called biodiversity and ecosystem functioning relationship, supports the human well-being. Just to start, we need to get some really basic concepts about the ecosystem. And then, sorry for specialists here, for my colleagues, but I want to start just about from the scratch, like when we make a pizza and then we start from water, flour, and so on. Because I need to recall some basic concept that we need to build the concept of functioning, and then we start from scratch. This is just the starting point of one ecosystem, which is a human extrapolation, actually. An ecosystem doesn't know that it is an ecosystem. We know, we call something as ecosystem, but actually one among the most important issues in ecology and ecosystems, in ecosystem ecology, is to define boundaries. Boundaries are really complicated issue, and then first we need to start with boundaries. We know that in an ecosystem we have abiotic components, biotic components, but the most, this is, for example, just is a zoom from a beach in this virtual ecosystem that I need to, we need for the successive slides. And what is probably the most important concept in ecosystem ecology is the fact that ecosystem is an open box. Not just a closed box, is an open system. And then what is probably the most important thing is that in an ecosystem there are some adjacent systems connecting with our ecosystem where the energy and matter flow. And then this is really important because this opens to two important concepts, the spatial and functional connectivity. We are not able to define ecosystem if we don't think to spatial and functional connectivity, which connect all components in the ecosystems and generates the interactions among components, and then connect also far systems. For example, from a river in flow, we can have information transmission along the water mass in this case. This is just a really common NASA movie showing what I mean. If I was a virtual tuna in the Balearic, for example, I am sure that if I spawn my eggs, these eggs probably don't fit local population, local density, but probably they move far from just due to the presence of hydrodynamics, move far from the local, the place where they were produced. And this is a really nice, a really important concept, because when we talk about a modern view to build a modern view and a modern ecological view to manage resources, we must consider these types of concepts. And this is valid for every type of ecosystems, and then in water, in fresh water, in salt water, and also in terrestrial water. The difference is that in aquatic habitats, the means is just water. In terrestrial habitats, the means is the atmosphere. But the turbulence and the movement are the same, have the same role. Another important concept that we need to consider in 2020 or 2021 during the Expo in Dubai is that the action of the man, the human action, is an important component. And then we need to consider the social components as intrinsic and essential components, essential parts of our ecosystems. The social components make more diverse the use of ecosystems, and then the most important issue in this is that the ecosystems perceive the human action as a cumulative pressure. And we know that we have different anthropogenic drivers acting on our ecosystems, and they transversally elicit ecological responses. Okay. Ecological responses along the ecological hierarchy from individual to ecosystems, and they are a different kind of drivers of stressors acting from local to global, from global to local. And then now, in 2021, it's not easy to accept the definition of ecosystem, HODUM style, we need to introduce the socio-ecological systems, the socio-ecological concept, and then now we call an ecosystem as socio-ecological system. But since we have really complex systems, since the complexity is an intrinsic characteristics of our feature of our system, the new definition is CAS, complex adaptive socio-ecological system, and is open to different aspects, to different types of definition, and also the management measures of the human action need to consider this type of approaches. The last but not the least issue for us when we study in ecology the ecosystem dynamics is the time. Time is an issue because actually in the old view of ecosystem ecology, the time was not so studied, and the approach was often different approaches neglected the time component. Instead, time is an explicit component that makes phenology. Phenology is the biological cycles of organisms. Represents is the science studying how the organisms evolve, change across their biological cycle, and then it is quite logical that we need to consider the time in phenology, and the phenology is really important to understand the functioning. And then I think that we need to put our ecosystem just in the middle of an X and a Y axis, and then the time is always, when we study the ecosystem dynamics, always on the x-axis. And this open to the first concept that I want to recall today here, which is the concept of ecosystem function. When we put the time on the x-axis, and when we put every characteristics on the y-axis, we have what we call rate of change. And if we have a rate of change, we open to the concept of functioning. And then the ecosystem functioning is any characteristic of an ecosystem changing with time. Nahim in 2002 used mathematically this concept and formalized some equations, and he defined the ecosystem function as the dependence of a certain characteristic on a set of covariates plus an error plus epsilon. And then this means that we want to study the biomass production, for example, of a marine forest or a terrestrial forest, or what you want, a oyster reef or coral reef. We need to express the change and the functioning as a function of the interaction of a different kind of covariates from the physical and chemical availability of resources, for example, CO2 availability, or just the sedimentary grains, or just the water quality, to the functional traits like body temperature and body size. And then we have now all elements to define the concept of functioning. An ecosystem works well when interaction, processes, and structures persist over time in every place inside our ecosystem boundaries. And then the concept of boundaries is essential, is important. And when these characteristics ensure a persistence of ecosystem and goods and services, these, according to the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment 2005 framework support the human well-being. Why? Because there are the mechanistic link, and this means that if you go across the literature, there is a specific link showed asserting that if you increase the number of species in an ecosystem, you increase the number of functions in that ecosystem, and then you stabilize the complexity and you stabilize the functioning of the system. And then our relationship, according to Cardinale et al. 2012, is that if you put biodiversity on x-axis, usually the number of ecosystem functions, like photosynthesis, for example, increases accordingly. Another is if you put ecosystem function, you move from y-axis here to y-axis here there to the x-axis here, you have a good relationship, positive relationship, and then if you increase the ecosystem functions, the ecosystem services and goods increases accordingly. Now we extrapolate and we move axes, okay? This means that if for the transitive property, if you put biodiversity on x-axis, you have a link, positive link with ecosystem goods and services. And this means, according to the framework, the Millennium Framework, Millennium Ecosystem Assessment 2005 framework, then linking ecosystem services and human well-being, this means that biodiversity is linked to human well-being. And this means that biodiversity has a crucial role in addressing our quality of our life. Just a really quick spot on the new theory after Labeled and Chase 2018. Actually, we have this relationship, local diversity, functioning, human well-being, are supported by a lot of different kind of processes. Just to avoid to enter deeper in details, but this means that probably we are not able to think only to BEF, biodiversity ecosystem functioning, as crucial in our management approaches, but probably we need to move to a CAFE approach, community assembly and functioning ecosystem relationship, but this is we don't have time for that. Okay, and then which is the repercussions of this theory on the management of resources, for example? The whole view used the single species approach to manage the resources. For example, in fisheries, usually whole biologists thought that if they protect, if they conserve, or if they manage just one species, the resources were okay and then saved. Instead, in the light of what I said before, along this talk, actually we don't have in an ecosystem, if we approach to the management using the ecosystem theory and the ecosystem approach, we know that we don't have just a single species, but we have more than one species interacting among them. They are actually in one habitat, and then we have different components, and then if we preserve the habitat, actually we will preserve the relationship, the interaction between among different species, and then is meaningless to protect just one species species in 2021. And this because that component, the interaction of these in this habitat are just a small part of our ecosystem. And then if we Google our view, we understand immediately that this small number of species and this habitat is actually a part of a larger system connected with adjacent system, and then to manage resources we need actually to preserve the habitat, interactions and functioning. This is the main aim of our future politics strategies on biodiversity. Tommy Mazzo et al. 2013 synthesized all these things in this framework. Thank you. I am from University of Palermo. As before Paolo, Professor Galli said, this is my group, about 24 people from early career researchers, senior researcher, and to undergraduate students. And this is my current network. Thank you, Professor Galli, for to have invited me. Thank you to the team of the Pavilion, Italian Pavilion, for the support and assistance. And thank you for your attention. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Sarà. And now it's time to listen the question. So the first one is from Callum Michael Roberts. Now we can listen him. One second. Can you, one second, we can start. It's time for Callum.
Hello, my name is Callum Roberts and I'm Professor of Marine Conservation at the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom. My challenge for the next generation is how to shift governance of the world from national to international, or rather global level. We've been taken by surprise over the last century at how fast human influence has spread across our planet. Now what countries do in the pursuit of their own national interests can have impacts upon the lives and well-being of other countries across the planet. The whole planet is everybody's backyard. We urgently need to find a way of governing ourselves at the international or global level so that what countries do is in the interests of everyone rather than in the pursuit of their own selfish interests. So we need to protect the planet and its resources for the benefit of everyone, but we haven't yet achieved a way of scaling up governance to this global level. That is a challenge, and I leave it for you.
Thank you, Callum. And is there any people who want to reply to him? You? Okay, please. Enrico Montalbetti.
So good morning to everyone. I'm Enrico Montalbetti. I'm a researcher from University of Milan Bicocca and Mare Center. I'll try to answer this difficult question because, I mean, the question is easy, but the challenge is difficult. Actually, what I think is that from the Romans' time, human beings try to find rules and to find ways to exploit what we call natural resources. So we have countries around the world declaring marine spaces and also land spaces to be protected, but with a pursuit of an exploiting operation of natural resources. What I think can really change this path, this way of thinking, is really education. So to make new generations, like my generation, more educated, but more, let's say, aware of what the possibilities for natural resources are. So not only something to be exploited, but something that, as Professor Sarah explained before, must be protected and conserved for a purpose of improving our well-being. So I think it is important. We have now many more chances, many more possibilities to educate people than it was like 50, 40, but even 20 years ago. So the really important thing, I think, is to make people more aware. And if you are aware of the importance of something, for sure you'll be more involved in trying to protect it. And the governance, the global governance of these resources, for sure will benefit from this general awareness. This is my thought. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, now another question from Carlos Maria Duarte, very famous professor at the Cast University in Saudi Arabia, and now we can listen to him.
Hello, my name is Carlos Duarte. I am a marine ecologist with a few years left in my research career. So I would like to pass on a legacy question to you, which I will be unable to resolve. And my question is, would rapid adaptation allow marine organisms to cope with the pace of climate change? I hope you get the answer.
Thank you, Carlos. And any people want to reply to him? You? Please, come. A very young student.
Hi everybody, I'm Federico Cerri at the University of Milan Bicocca. So what Professor Duarte said is a very interesting question, and I think that everyone knows that marine organisms have always been adapted to changes. But I think this change is more rapid due to man's fault. That is climate change, that is global warming. And these changes, I think that, sure, more organisms will survive. But I think that the most delicate one will not. And when I say delicate, I think corals. I think that global change, global warming, climate change will impact obviously on corals' life. And so we must do something to change, to reverse this trend. And I think we can do it. I think we must do it, and we must do it right now. So this is my answer to Professor Duarte. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Federico. Next question. Oh, we are moving from the ocean to the mountains. We have Carolina Adler. Let's listen her.
Hello, my name is Carolina Adler. I'm the Executive Director at the Mountain Research Initiative, or MRI, and also lead author for the 6th assessment of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Having just completed the Working Group 2 contribution to the 6th assessment, one of the things that stood out for me as a need for us to address as a research community is to understand better how climate change adaptation actually works. What works, for whom, and how? These are important questions about how we not only address the impacts of climate change, but how we adapt to a new environment, to a new normal that we need to be considering as we move forward into our development pathways into our future. Best of luck with your research and activities in addressing these important questions for our mountain communities.
Thank you, Carolina. And any people want to reply? Okay, please. You don't want to reply, so we don't have any. Okay, so a young scientist want to reply, please.
Semi-young, because I'm not that young, but I work for the University of Milan and Unimont especially. So actually there is no real answer to this, because I think the process of understanding how climate change impacts local communities as well as the environment is still an open question. So I think we will have to assess and understand how, as it was said before, biodiversity has an impact also on our lives, but of course you have to assess also the economic side and the livelihoods of local communities, especially in mountain areas. So I think this is actually an open question to me as well. So the research will have to be done, and especially on mountain areas, it's still lagging behind on some topics.
Thank you. Thank you. And after Carolina, we have to see the next one. Anna Giorgi. Here we are. And we have Anna Giorgi in the video and in the present. So we can ask what we want also after the...
I'm Anna Giorgi. I'm an environmental botanist at the University of Milan. I'm Director's Delegate for Mountain Educational Research and Third Mission activities, and I'm also responsible for Unimont Campus, a detachment of the University of Milan in the Alpine Mountains. Mountains cover almost 27% of the Earth's surface, are home to 1 billion people, and provide goods and services to humans, both local communities and downstream users. Mountains are a very important repository of agrobiodiversity, represented by locally adapted plants and breeds whose productivity is very good in the environmental condition in which they evolved. These traditional plants and animals are also at the base of the only sustainable and profitable agricultural practice in the mountains. In fact, they require low inputs, are suitable for organic agriculture, and provide high quality and unique products. The problem is that they are under serious threat. In fact, 75% of the world's agrobiodiversity has been lost in the last century. This loss is a serious issue, as these traditional breeds and crops, known as land races, are not only a cultural and traditional heritage, but they are also a very important source of food diversity and a genetic pool of resilient crops, guaranteeing food security in the face of climate change. Which is, in your opinion, the main action to be taken to effectively promote the conservation of these land races?
Okay, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. Who want to reply on this question? Oh. Yes, you can.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Luca Campone from University of Milan Bicocca, and this is a really interesting question. More than a question, is a challenge, because for me, we can find two different solutions. The first one is something like that, to inform and promote the information about the biodiversity, and the other one is food biodiversity, because in the past the selection of crops and in general agricultural production is just focus on the productivity, just focus on the aspect of the food and the taste of the food, but not real understand the micronutrient, for example, vitamins, flavonoid, and different adaptive of the different climates. So we have to promote different food byproduct biodiversity to try to put in the other land, for example, mountain and different land to try to promote this food biodiversity. That could be an opportunity for everybody.
Thank you, Professor Tampone, and thank you for Anna, Professor of University of Milano. And now, another question. Brian. Okay. Brian is a professor of environmental science of public policy at Boston University.
Hey, my name is Brian Helmuth, and I'm a professor at Northeastern University's Coastal Sustainability Institute in Boston, where I have appointments both in marine science and public policy. Well, basic science has always been and continues to be important. We're in the midst of a global crisis driven by climate change. I think we need to start prioritizing actionable, use-inspired research that can inform climate mitigation and adaptation, rather than continuing to search for one-size-fits-all patterns that have been the hallmark of ecological research for decades now. Specifically, we need to study impacts of weather which are driven by climate rather than by mismatching global patterns of climate change in factors such as temperature and acidification and precipitation, with the very small scales of which organisms respond to those environmental conditions. Intellectually, one of the most beautiful things about the natural world is its diversity and variability in space and time. More often than not, however, scientists continue to try to force-fit experiments into easy generalizations without doing the hard work of exploring what real heterogeneity in the environment means to socio-ecological systems. My challenge to you is to find a solution to this conundrum. And I think there are two key places to start. First, connect networks of people working at local scales, and especially be sure to include people from the global south and people of color who are traditionally underrepresented in science. Second, work collaboratively with non-scientists to identify problems at local scales and then recruit them in finding solutions. We can't solve the global crisis using the same thinking that got us into this mess in the first place.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And any people want to reply at this question? Please, come.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm Giulia, PhD student at the University of Milan Bicocca. And I think that the key word of this answer is integration and interdisciplinary approaches. So, to answer to this kind of questions, so big question, the only thing that we can do is use an interdisciplinary approach with a lot of skills from very different fields and work together to find answers that are really intricate, of course, depending on the intricate of the ecosystems. So, thanks.
Thank you. I can tell you that I agree, definitely. Thank you, Brian. And now it's time for Bernard Clarmont Lopez.
Hello, my name is Bernard Clarmont, and this is my question for you. Many counties in the Catalan Pyrenees have traditionally made a living from tourism. In places where there are ski slopes, skiing has been a major source of income for the region and actually a major driver of the region's economy. However, in recent times, climate change has forced a diversification of the tourist offer, giving more importance to summer tourism. In other regions where agriculture and livestock have traditionally been more relevant, there is also a light transition to a greater importance of rural tourism. It seems impossible to escape the vision that society gives to the mountains, which is of areas that provide many ecosystem services to the population. And it seems logical actually to think that a good strategy for the development of a region that offers so many ecosystem services is to offer them to the population that visits them. However, depending on tourism as the main driver is obviously dangerous, and this has been shown with the recent pandemic. We also know how we humans are. The more we are offered, the more we want. The exploitation of such assets has worked and can work in many places, but for how long? There are other sustainable development strategies that do not depend so much on tourism for mountains. For example, can mountain regions be pioneers in a society centered on degrowth? Can site-specific models be developed and designed by the inhabitants of mountain areas for mountain areas and not thought by those living in the metropoles? These are, I think, key questions for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. Any reply to him? Who want to reply to him? Of course, we hope to have an answer at any question, but sometimes there are no questions. So, Bernard, sorry, but... Oh, please. Okay. Bernard, you have a chance.
Thank you, Paolo. So I'm Emiliano Pioltelli. I'm a PhD student from the University of Milan Bicocca, and I'm not actually expert in mountain ecosystem, but I work on urban ecosystem, and I think that the interest in ecosystem service is the key for sustainability, as ecosystem services are services that nature provides to human well-being, and so we need to valorize these services by the protection, through the protection of biodiversity, and so this is a possible key to achieve sustainability and also sustainable development of human activities in all the type of ecosystems, so urban ecosystem, marine ecosystem, mountain ecosystem, and I think studying the response also of biodiversity to our action and to our activities is also important in achieving the knowledge of how to protect ecosystem and the service they provide. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Bernard. Now, I have to push, otherwise nothing happens. Silvano Fares, okay? Please
Hi,
speak.
my name is Silvano Fares. I'm a researcher at the National Research Council of Italy and steering committee member of the Integrated Land Ecosystem Process Study Program. My interest is interaction between plants and the atmosphere, in particular in the urban environments. Forests worldwide are very well known to help us mitigate the harsh effect of climate changes. For instance, they can abate about 1/3 of carbon dioxide emitted from burning fossil fuels. But in the city, they are even more important. Forests are multifunctional. They can provide what we call a range of ecosystem services. One of these services provided by the community is their capacity, for instance, to mitigate the bad effects of the heat island, so they make the air a little bit cooler, livable. Another important ecosystem service is their capacity to sequestrate pollutants from the urban atmosphere, in particular ozone, particles, nitrogen oxides. For this and many other ecosystem services provided by urban forests, I believe we need more research, more interest, more investigation on the role of urban forests to ameliorate our life. And also it's very important in light of future climate change, because plants, like humans, are also vulnerable organisms to climate changes. So there are many important questions about which tree species we are going to plant, where are we going to locate our urban park, what is the area in the city that reserve the higher amount of ecosystem services. So I hope the importance of urban forests in our city can stimulate debate about young scientists, and thanks for the attention.
Thank you, Silvano. Any question from the room? Let me check any question, because we have also some students, some young researchers connected in other parts of the world. I think that there is a Tomao is here with us?
Yes,
Tomao?
yes, I am. Maybe Ilaria can answer.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear?
1 second. 1 second. Tomao. Speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, maybe Ilaria has asked to answer to the question, if I understand from the chat.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio. Thank you.
Ilaria, okay. Thank you, Ilaria.
So, hi everyone, I'm Ilaria Zappitelli and I'm a biologist. I'm doing a PhD at the University of Tuscia in Science, Technology and Biotechnology for Sustainability. So maybe I can answer this question. I believe that in Italy there is a great floristic diversity of the trees, the street trees, often in accordance with the local climate, and this is really important because this diversity could be due to cultural, political, economic, but it's rarely an ecological choices. So to choose the right trees, you need to know the type of pollution present in the specific city and see which species is the best suited to cushion that type of pollution. So this is possible through a study on ecosystem services and disservices. Despite the numerous regulations, the trees are still cut indiscriminately, favoring the disappearance, for example, of these street trees. So, with depth research on species, more or less suitable trees could be proposed based on the need of the place and this specific pollution. So, reducing costs and obtain the maximum economic and ecological yield. So in this sense, waste will be avoided and we can have a better management of the trees and of all the green species. So I believe that green is in fact something that the citizens want sentimentally. They really want this, but which is often not willing to grant the necessary space and condition. So we need to study the ecosystem services and these services.
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you. So now we can continue with another question. Fiorenza Micheli, okay, from Stanford University, from America.
I am Fiorenza Micheli, and I'm the co-director of Hopkins Marine Station and Center for Ocean Solutions at Stanford University. The most critical question we're facing is how we develop solutions to the many pressing problems affecting the ocean and therefore our planet and everyone living on it, including all of us. We are seeing unprecedented upheaval from climate change, biodiversity loss, escalating conflict and inequalities. Covering 70% of Earth, the oceans offer this vast potential for new learning, new discoveries, development of new technologies and governance models and new connections. So my question to the young scientists and future leaders is how do we develop solutions to the most pressing ocean problems and develop them at a scale that matters? How do we move from documenting impacts to actually addressing these impacts and reversing these trends? How do we work in a different way to achieve these goals, and how do we change our priorities? This is the decade for ocean, and it needs to be the decade of solutions. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Fiorenza. Thank you for your question. And probably some people in other parts of the world from in the Maldives will reply at this question. I think that Simone Montano decided to reply at this question. Thank you, Simone.
Hi to everybody. Can you hear me very well? Okay, perfect. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Simone Montano, a researcher of the Milano Bicocca University and of the Mare Center, that is a marine field station located in Magudu, it's an island of their Maldivian archipelago. So to answer the question is not easy, but what I'm thinking recently is that we have to move from simply, as marine biology, simply reporting the state of art of the problem to finding a scalable solution. And to do that, I think we can achieve this task mixing the knowledge and the skills of people coming from different expertise. And in this context, marine biology should come start to speak with engineers, politics, and whatever to try to develop new tools in order to reduce the impact of many different traits, or try to develop higher level in terms of technology mitigation tools in order to enhance the recover or the protection of any kind of ecosystem. Particularly, I'm talking about marine ecosystems. In this context, whenever we will be able to reduce local stressor and produce new tools able to scale up, for example, habitat restoration, we may provide to give a chance to an ecosystem to resist or recover from the stress related to global climate change.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you also for the yesterday. Thank you, Simone, and thank you also for yesterday, for your stream live presentation of yesterday under the ocean, near the coral reef in the Maldives. And now it's time for another question. Let us see. Okay, Roberto Da Novaro. Professor Roberto Da Novaro is a president of Stazione Zoologica Anton Dohr of Naples in Italy. He's a very famous professor, one of the top scientists in the world. And can we listen to him now?
Go. I'm Roberto Da Novaro, and I'm a marine biologist teaching at the Polytechnic University of Marche in Italy, and I'm the president of the Stazione Zoologica Anton Dohr of Naples. And I'm here to provide you some suggestions on the future challenges for the young scientists that are approaching the study of the oceans. I think that one of the most important issues for the future is understanding the impact of global climate change on marine life and ecosystems. I think that we are too concentrated on measuring temperatures or measuring the CO2 concentration than really understanding the impact of global climate change. That means indeed rising temperatures, but also decreasing pH, so ocean acidification, and deoxygenation. So in the future of the oceans, is very problematic, and we will face a combination of factors that will decrease the biodiversity, will decrease the overall productivity, ecosystem functioning, and will decrease the fisheries. And I think that in the future we have to study these issues.
Thank you, Roberto. Any people inside of the room want to reply to him? Luca? Thank you, Luca.
So thank you. I'm Luca Fallati, a researcher of University of Milan Bicocca, and I think that this is a great and tough question. So it's not easy to understand how the ecosystems and especially the micro parts of an ecosystem react to climate change and human impacts. So I think that in the future we will have the chance to increase our knowledge, especially using new technology that can help us a lot. So, for example, we are now a lot of satellites flying over us that can help us to have a synoptic overview of the situation, recording a lot of data. So data of the water, of the land, then helping us to monitor and mapping the moving of the organism also around the world. And then moving from the satellite, we can go underwater with other instruments like autonomous underwater vehicle can explore and track changes also underwater. And then we have also new important knowledge thanks to artificial intelligence. So we can use all of these new technologies tools to try to collect a lot of new data and maybe answer in a better way to this question. So thank you.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Luca. And now another question. Oh, Simone Fattorini, and a professor at the University of L'Aquila.
My name is Simone Fattorini and I'm an ecologist at the University of L'Aquila in Italy. For the first time in the human history, there are more people that live in cities than in rural areas. This opens important questions about how to address the urban development. Many people think that cities are ecological monsters that consume enormous amounts of materials and energy and are of course a source of pollution. For these reasons, they think that we should return to a more rural life. But large cities make it possible to concentrate millions of inhabitants in the same place, providing them with water, food, goods and services, possibly with high efficiency. Most probably, the ecological footprint of people that live in a city is smaller than that of the same number of inhabitants dispersed in rural areas. So, should we promote urbanization as our last hope for a sustainable development?
Thank you, Simone. I think that there is a guy from Italy, that is Tomao, want to reply to this question.
Maybe I can answer this question.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I'm Antonio Tomao. I'm a researcher at the Council for Agricultural Research and Economics. And I would like to thank the Professor Fattorini for his question. I think it's a very interesting topic for future research because the topic of sustainable urbanization is now very important for topic for urban planning and for sustainability. In this regard, I think we should pay attention to trade-offs in hosting even more people in urban areas because if we have seen that in many cities around the world, urban growth rate is higher than population growth rate. So this phenomenon has caused also the so-called urban sprawl, so an uncontrolled expansion of cities that causes land take and land consumption. So I think that in this regard we should think more about sustainable urban planning that should favor an expansion of cities into brownfield instead of natural areas around cities or in the fringes of large cities. And this could help to mitigate the urban expansion problems. For example, we should think more about how to give people more accessibility to urban green spaces that are very important in the urban areas, and this could help also to increase sustainability at urban level. So there is room for new research in these regards about these issues, both from ecologists and urban planners that should work together to improve knowledge about this topic.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you. And with Simone, we finish the discussion with this event. And but I would like to ask, to Professor Labra to come here to tell us some words. Please.
Thank you very much, Paolo Galli, and all the speakers. I only marked few final suggestions of this discussion. I would like to start to the topic of Expo 2020, Connecting Mind. So I think that today
science, open and connected mind from different people, from top and young scientists. But I think that science as biodiversity, as environment, belong to everyone. Then I wish that people in future must contribute to protect biodiversity, to protect environment, also by improve science and technologies, but also to work together to protect our resource, our biodiversity, our environment. The second suggestion starts from Italian beauty, the Italian pavilion. I think that Italian beauty is made up from different elements, and science is one of the most important elements of Italian beauty. Yesterday we received the Nobel Prize for Physics Parisi, and I think that in Italy we have several good scientists, several young good scientists. Then my wish for the future, also thanks to recovery plan, that more people are moved by scientists' curiosities and open mind to critical analysis, not only to the very actual topics such as vaccines, but also to biodiversity, to the environment, to climate change. And I think that the problem of biodiversity is very big, but as mentioned very well by Gianluca Sarà, biodiversity has clear effect on our well-being. Then it's very, very important topics for the future, for the next generation, and for Italian beauty also. Okay, thank you, Paolo.
Thank you. And Dave and Giorgia, yes, please come.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank Professor Galli for inviting us, University of Milan, the detachment of the University of Milan in the Alps, in a little village in the central Italian Alps, is a challenge as well, because the attentions and the energies are much more concentrated on urban dimensions now, and villages are suffering and they require attention. They are in very fragile ecosystems in mountains, but also in marine areas, of course, and we have to take care. And I want to congratulate with the students and researchers, because they suggested a lot of very interesting things, and from my point of view, the direction is the right one, because interdisciplinary now is fundamental. We can't go on in reducing the complexity of nature, and otherwise we will have a lot of information, but not the vision that is really important, because as we learned also this morning, the interactions are at the basis of the ecosystems, how the ecosystem works. And so we have to go in that direction, and it's not easy. We know very well that it's not easy to work in an interdisciplinary way. And the use of technology, we have a lot of opportunities, and they are growing day by day. And we have to put energies in finding the way of applying new technologies to research on these topics. And the knowledge on ecosystems, on natural systems is growing day by day as well. And these give us, as human beings, great responsibilities, because now we know that we are impacting a lot on the natural ecosystems. We are part of nature with a big added value, the capability of understanding and on building up visions and to see the future in some way. And the future we see is not so bright if we don't change the development models. And so we have to be brave, because it's a fact of courage now. And change is not due only to government decisions. Change starts from our daily life. Are we ready to change our daily life? Because this is one of the main questions we have to put to ourselves, to do to ourselves. Thank you very much, and also thanks to the Italian Pavilion team, because I know they are working hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So now the event is finished, and I would like to tell you thank you. I would like to thank you the people around the world that were here with us. And I hope to see you soon in any part of the world. Thank you.